coming. This is part of the Morley Winter Festival. So we've invited some authors, some recently published authors, to come and read from their work, including Jade Emily Jackson, who's a drama student at Morley. So this is part of the Morley kind of opening our doors and showing what's going on here.
Penguin wanted actively to find new writers. They're like, how do we do this? We don't know. We're attracting the same old sort of people. The agents are sending us the same people. And what came out of that was a competition that would be national, that we, the Arts Council, would coordinate and advertise, and then they would do what they did well, which is publish the book. We felt that the most pressing issue at the moment was about immigration. It was the hot subject. It was the thing that got people's blood going. And so we decided that this book would be about immigration and it would be about people's stories. And because it was about immigration, we didn't limit it to African, Asian and Caribbean. We broadened it out and said anybody could apply.
My piece is called Immigrant. I am migrant, I'm migrant, migrant, immigrant. I like to think that this is how the word immigrant was created. It seems kinder. It takes the harshness and edge off a word that can so easily sound abusive. It makes me feel like a bird that has temporarily flown the nest, meaning to return home one day. When I told my mother about my impending move to London, one of the first things she said was, "Oh, how wonderful. I'll bring down all the coats and sweaters." My family had lived in London many years ago. Like most Indians who are loath to part with things, we still owned box upon box of possessions we had no use for in Madras. Though with the weather behaving as it has lately, perhaps the southern states of India will one day see snow. Everywhere we went, my coat and I stuck out like a communist flag, billowing against the virginal white facades of the gated communities in the Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea. From the moment I stepped out of our room, I was surrounded by women draped in cashmere, carrying bags that cost more than my life savings, reminding me of how little I belonged. I tried my best to blend in. My wardrobe consisted of clothes more suited to sunnier climes. Crinkled cotton skirts in shocking pinks and copper sulfate blues, hems weighed down by tiny jingling bells. Salwar kameezes in kalamkari and ikat prints. Wearing these teamed with my jacket, I resembled a bag lady on acid. As the excitement of living in a new city slowly wore off, homesickness set in along with the dark winter evenings. I began to miss home, my parents, my life. I missed sunshine and palm trees and soft breezes that carried aloft the fragrance of tamarind. I missed bare shoulders and the feel of soft malmal against my skin. I didn't feel like me anymore. It was as though all those layers of clothes were suffocating my true self. I became sullen and morose, envious of the men and women frolicking around palm trees in the old 1980 movies the Indian cable channel showed. I stopped going out. Sitting next to the window by the radiator and looking at the empty street outside the house became my favorite pastime, until our boiler bust. As I sat shivering inside the house, I was forced to turn to the only comrade I had left, my mother's coat.
It's called A Leaky Roof in London, and I came to England when I was 13 from Kenya, so that's the background. So many Europeans, I thought, all walking, talking, pushing, pulling, smiling, crying, bags here, children there, policemen in helmets. They really were helmets. I felt a sense of importance being among all these white foreigners who were going about their business as if it was nothing special. But I always knew I would be a star one day, and here I was. I had a sense that white people, my father called them Europeans, were special. We all looked up to them, despite knowing they had taken over both our heritage countries of Kenya and India, and they seemed not to notice us. The house was dirty and had something called rising damp, which made the wallpaper black and mouldy, and the carpets wet and musty. We would all be sleeping in one room because the rest of the rooms were taken. It's temporary, my mother said. We were to hear that a lot. We cleaned and coughed and sneezed for what seemed like hours. When I realized it had indeed been hours, I looked outside, then hurriedly climbed onto the top bunk. "Look, the sun is still shining," I shouted, excited, pointing. It was 10 at night. A miracle. Surely that went against the very laws of science. We had left Kenya with almost everything we owned, also in a bit of a hurry, shortly after a failed military coup. Some of the looting and rifle firing had been in view of our flat in the center of Nairobi, located between the police and fire stations. We were caught in the crossfire. We hardly went out. But in London also we hardly went out. When we did, we heard people shouting, "Paki!" At first I wondered whom they were shouting at. When I realized it was us, and that Paki meant Pakistani, I explained we weren't Pakistani, but Indian by origin, although I admitted I'd never been to India. They could call us Indies for short, to get our attention. But Paki it was, and I realized it wasn't so much to get our attention. I got punched or kicked for taking the trouble to explain, or spat at sometimes by one, sometimes by many boys.
I wrote a poem about English lady, how I saw an English lady when I was in Africa. "You English lady, your white skin looks like snow on Mount Kilimanjaro. I really like your skin so much, that's why I buy lightening cream to make me look like you. I just turned red and my skin began to darken, especially around my eyes. Your waist looks like that of a wasp. Your tummy is flat. I do not think you eat any food at all, while I go for milk and bread for breakfast."
My painful journey. No one leaves her home unless she is running away from something or someone has driven her away. I am telling you, I have a first-hand experience of that. We were born in northern Uganda, my twin sister Jane and me. We studied up to Makerere University, where I met my husband, the father of my 3 children. My husband and I helped a lot of people cross over to Kenya, financially and physically, as their lives were in danger. One day, government soldiers just came to our home. My husband had just returned from the farm and we had just started eating lunch when 5 soldiers came and said the big man wanted to see my husband. At first I thought he was taken to a barrack in our town, which I went and checked out, but found out that he had been taken 300 miles to Kampala. After 2 weeks, I went to Kampala and bribed soldiers who were responsible for his whereabouts, with equivalent of £300, just to be told that he was killed. He was beheaded, and I buried him without a head, and it was the worst time for me and my children, seeing their father without a head. Even if they were still very young, it really affected them. We went on with our lives for a few months. Then my father and my sister Jane were killed by a gunman because of just 10 herds of cattle in the same year. Today I blame myself because my sister wanted me to go with her to Kenya for one day, and I told her to wait since I was consumed with grief for my late husband, and the day she wanted us to go to Kenya was the day they were murdered. My children gave me strength, but they were not to be since they were abducted on the 13th of January 2001. To date, no news of them, though the Red Cross is looking for them. And then I was also abducted with several people, others shot dead. In April 2001, and after 2 months of captivity, hardship, rape, hunger, and burying my friends, one soldier aided me and I escaped from my abductors.